6 months into his second term, President Trump has yet to deliver on one of his most repeated campaign pledges, capping credit card interest rates at 10%. With rates still above 25%, Senator Elizabeth Warren has put a dollar figure on the delay. According to the Century Foundation, American families are accruing an additional $368 million in credit card interest every single day, a running tab now exceeding $55 billion.
In January, Donald Trump promised to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. 10%. That was the president's promise that he made directly to American families. Well, okay, it's been 6 months. Credit card interest rates are still well above 25%, and President Trump has failed to follow through on his promise. According to the Century Foundation, every day that Trump fails to enforce his cap, American families rack up an additional $368 million in credit card debt every single day. That means that American families have accrued an additional $55 billion in interest because Trump failed to deliver. That's a lot of money. So let's put that in perspective. For about $38 billion, we could provide free pre-K to every American child. $19 billion could restore cuts to food assistance. Or think about this. For $14 billion, we could save rural hospitals. Or we could restore a year's worth of Medicare cuts for $45 billion. $823 million could fully fund the CFPB, the financial cop on the beat that stops scammers from ripping you off. With $40 billion, the federal government could wipe out student loan debt entirely for nearly 4 million borrowers. Or with $33 billion, they could cancel medical debt for over 3 million people. But instead of doing any of that, Donald Trump is letting Wall Street pad its profits while Americans struggle to keep up with rising costs. American families want Washington to do something about the affordability crisis. The story is in the data. Americans are saving a smaller share of their income than at any point in nearly 4 years. And at the same time, serious delinquencies on credit cards, auto loans, and student loans have climbed to their highest levels since the aftermath of the financial crisis. Let me tell you something. Americans aren't maxing out their credit cards because they are feeling optimistic. They're doing it because they're trying to keep up. And while they're doing that, Donald Trump is handing tax cuts to billionaires and sitting on a rate cap promise that could give families real relief today. None of this is an accident. It is a choice, and it tells you everything about who Donald Trump and his administration are actually fighting for, and it's not you.
The gap between the administration's rhetoric on costs and its actual enforcement shows up at the grocery store, too. After years of elevated egg prices, the Justice Department investigated and found evidence of collusion among 3 major producers. But instead of prosecution, the Trump administration settled for a fine of just $3 million, a sum one of those same companies could earn in hours, given annual profits exceeding $2 billion.
I need to say something to Elizabeth Warren. U.S. antitrust enforcers are accusing 3 large egg producers of coordinating their bids.
She may have been right.
She may have been right.
May have been right about part of this.
Come on. You can just say it. I was right to ask questions about inflated prices in the egg market. Look, 2 years ago, egg prices were soaring, and the biggest egg producers blamed the price hikes on bird flu. At the same time, these giant companies were still raking in record profits. So I pushed the Justice Department to investigate whether these companies were manipulating the market. Well, the Justice Department did investigate and ended up accusing 3 major egg producers of doing exactly that, colluding to artificially inflate egg prices. But instead of taking these 3 companies to court, The Trump administration let him off with barely a slap on the wrist, a measly $3 million fine. One company alone made more than $1.2 billion, that's with a B, in profits last year. It's just plain wrong. No wonder families are still paying too much at the grocery store. Giant corporations cheat, and Trump just lets them off the hook.
The price of the administration's miscalculations does not end at the checkout line. Earlier this year, the president declared the United States had won its war against Iran. But months later, American troops are still in harm's way. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed, oil prices are climbing again, and the country has drawn down the interceptors it relies on to protect its own forces from incoming Iranian strikes.
We have depleted our interceptors, which are the weapons we use to intercept incoming Iranian attacks, which are obviously necessary to protect American troops. Donald Trump said, "We won this war." We won. Those were his words back in March. And so the question is, now we're in July. Why are Americans still getting killed? Why is the Strait of Hormuz still closed? Why are oil and gas prices going back through the roof again? Pete Hegseth told the country just last year that we had, quote, obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. So for them to continue to say that's the reason they're prolonging the war, again, just shows that they don't know what they're doing, given their past statements.
That frustration is shared by colleagues who have pressed Pentagon leadership in committee hearings. They describe a conflict entered without a clear strategic goal, led by officials whose boasts, more than 14,000 targets struck, Iran's nuclear capability declared obliterated, have not matched the reality on the ground. The military stockpiles needed for any future conflict are being exhausted, and the costs of everyday life for Americans keep climbing.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this week that the president's approach is, quote, a head for an eye. Senator, do you think that's the right approach?
Well, I think these guys are flailing, and this thing is completely stuck because this president got into this without a strategic goal. They are flailing here. The head for the eye thing, I mean, this is, you hear this stuff out of the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, running around on a stage about maximum lethality and killing people and setting records with the number of targets hit. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's incompetent. He should have never had this job, and he should be fired. But they were all about the numbers. A conflict that, he was talking about setting records, going over 10,000 targets, 12,000, 14,000. We've expended tens of thousands of weapons. And it takes, as Pete Hegseth said in the committee hearing when I asked him this question, it's going to take years to replenish these. So this thing has been a disaster, and it's been a disaster for the American people. In a time when they couldn't afford their lives, this president gets us into this war, and costs then continue to skyrocket.
Senator John Ossoff frames the pattern as something more deliberate and more dangerous than simple miscalculation. In remarks before a congregation, he traces a direct line from the lies that launched this war to the lies that sustain it, and invokes the biblical story of King Ahab, a ruler who surrounded himself with yes-men, silenced the one prophet who warned against war, marched into a conflict he could not win, and paid for it with his reign.
The price of admission to the president's service seems to be proof that you're willing to lie for him. Have you seen it? Maybe you saw Jake Clayton, the president's nominee to lead our intelligence services, refuse again and again while he was under oath to affirm Donald Trump's defeat in 2020. Or Pete Hegseth before the Senate this week, refusing to recant his lies about the war. And there's something uniquely despicable about lying a nation into war. Treating citizens as fools and the selfless patriots who serve as pawns. Remember, earlier this year, they claimed there was an imminent nuclear threat. After last year, they told us the Iranian nuclear program had been obliterated. Do you remember? Both times lies. On day 12 of this war, the president said, quote, we won. On day 14, Hegseth said Iran's military was, quote, destroyed. 5 months later, we're still bombing. Americans are still dying. Iran still has its uranium. Hormuz is still closed. I challenge anyone to defend it. A war built on lies told by a White House utterly absent figures of integrity to dissuade the president from his delusions. And Ahab, too, surrounded himself with yes men. And it led him to reckless war and to his downfall. As he weighed going to war, King Ahab consulted his 400 court prophets, and they assured him unanimously of victory. Just one man spoke truth to power, the prophet Micaiah, who warned the king against war, and for it Ahab imprisoned him. Says Ahab of Micaiah in 1 Kings 22:8, I hate him because he never prophesies anything good about me. So Ahab silenced dissent and proceeded to war, and it was the costliest mistake of his reign. Now, in the kingdom of Samaria 3,000 years ago, those living under Ahab's misrule had little recourse. But in the United States today, the power of the presidency is nothing compared to the power of the people. Nothing.
What links today's clips is a single thread. Promises made and broken, numbers deployed to project strength while the reality diverges from the script. A broken cap on credit card rates. A $3 million fine for price fixing that earned a company $2 billion. A war declared won in March that is still claiming American lives. The accountability Senator Ossoff describes is not yet here, but as he puts it, it is coming.